Welcome to episode 68 of the SNDP podcast show on the Schmuck Sports Network. We do apologize for the last 2 weeks, but Dan, we're back.
Hey, welcome back, Steve. Yeah, last couple weeks. 1 week was you with
family stuff,
and me last week also with personal stuff. So that being said, it was good to be back. It's good to be back. Playoff hockey and basketball around the corner, so we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. We're going to have Dan from HockeyBuzz.com tonight to talk about the season review on the New York Islanders. Unfortunately, their season is going to end this weekend. As for the Rangers, they locked up a playoff spot. Looks like as of right now, they're going to be playing the Philadelphia Flyers unless the Columbus Blue Jackets find a way to leapfrog over the Philadelphia Flyers. So it's going to be interesting. Whoever the Rangers play next week, it's going to be a fun-filled matchup for either matchup for the Rangers. It's going to be interesting to see, considering the last time the Rangers played the Blue Jackets. We all know what happened with Nash going back to Columbus. So I'm excited for the Rangers for next week. With that being said, unfortunately, the Islanders, they're done, like we mentioned. How about our Knicks? They're holding on to dear life.
I blame the Hawks.
The Hawks just won't win to take the final playoff spot. Granted, it would be cool to see the Knicks will make the playoffs. Anytime you make the playoffs is a cool accomplishment. Even if you don't finish above 500, which is a travesty, especially in the NBA. That just goes to show you how watered down the NBA is and how bad of the product it is. But that being said, baseball started. The Mets and Yankees are playing blah right now, but it's the first week of the season, so you come to expect that. Here's more Division 1.1, and we'll start with a little basketball. All right, welcome back to the S&D podcast. Dan here with Steve. You just listened to the submission. Division 1.1, of course. Steve, unfortunately, we just got to get through this. A couple more weeks left with the NBA season. Unfortunately, our New York Knicks are on life support right now. Somehow, miraculously, they lost a few terrible games this week, last weekend, to secure the Knicks probably not making the playoffs, but the Atlanta Hawks just won't win and clinch the playoff spot. The Knicks are half a game out still with 2 games left, I want to say. With 2 games left, and it's going to be really interesting to see. Oh, not
more than that.
With 4 games left, I'm sorry.
The Hawks have 1, 2 tonight, Friday, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday.
Yeah, and the Knicks have 2 less games, I believe, if I read the paper right.
4. Friday, Sunday, Tuesday.
All right. So the Knicks have a little bit more of a tough sledding on the opponents that they play. But then again, you never know with the Atlanta Hawks because they did lose to the Detroit Pistons, who's just trying to get the season over with and wrapping it up. It's been that kind of season. I really, of course, would nice to see the Knicks make the playoffs, but honestly, I could care less because you're under 500, and what are they? If they win 1 game against Miami Heat, whoop-de-freaking do. Especially on how crappy last season, how great last season was. Awesome. Just how bad this season was.
Yeah.
It's really going to be interesting to see what Phil Jackson does in the off season, and who does he bring in for the new head coach. And it's going to be really interesting to see the first pieces that Phil does for the Knicks in the off season, and try to get this championship that the Knicks fans and Knicks players have been coveting for the last 40 years. And it's going to be really interesting to see what exactly is Phil going to do. And that's what I'm excited for in the offseason. I know we don't have a lot of cap room for this offseason, but in 2015 we do. So it's going to be really interesting to see what Phil does to jockey his position for 2015 summer. So with that being said, if
you got to think it's going to be a Jackson guy though to be the coach.
You would assume,
which
so.
is why.
And I trust Phil. He has that tool, that amount of players or coaches been around him and long enough that know what he wants, knows how to be around Phil and can gel well with him. And ultimately, we all know he's a winner because we know every team Phil's coached has won championships. So, hey, we need that winning culture on the Knicks. We have not had that since Jeff Van Gundy. Let's be fair. And that, let's be fair with that. And we haven't had that we need a win attitude. And if it wasn't for Pat Riley, for Jeff Van Gundy, none of this would have happened. We wouldn't have any coach like that since Pat Riley. So with that being said, it's going to be really interesting what the Knicks offseason is going to bring. It's rough that we won't have a first-round draft pick, especially this year with the draft class supposedly being one of the better ones the last couple of years.
Oh, everybody from Kentucky's coming out again.
Yeah.
Like always.
By the way, I won the pool, the March Madness pool. Thanks for everybody that played it this year. But some way, somehow, I won. Blind Mouse does find food every once in a while. So congratulations to me on that. Let's talk about the Nets. The Nets have been playing better. They beat the Miami Heat. They swept that series 4-0. It kind of reminds me of how the Knicks played against the Heat last year. It won't mean anything once the playoffs have started. It's going to be really interesting on how the Nets are going to take care of business this year on the playoffs run. I could see the Nets definitely win the first round, regardless who they play, and take it from there, especially since they're going to have to play a very good, solid team, maybe the Pacers or the Heat in the second round, maybe the Bulls. So it's really going to be interesting to see.
It looks like they may have to play the Bulls in the first round.
Well, that's going to be a little tough. It's going to be tough if they play the Bulls in the first round, because we all know how scrappy the Bulls are.
Right.
And I love Thibodeau, and I love that team, the Bulls team as a whole. So it's really going to be interesting to see what kind of flow with the Nets' older players who have been through the playoff rings and won titles and been to the NBA Finals. It's really going to be interesting to see what they have left in the tank to make that long playoff push. What do you think about the Nets as they're about to embark on a playoff run?
All right, people, first off, are way too high on this Pumbly Brown block. First off, it was a foul. I don't care what anybody says. I watched it a bunch of times. It was clearly a foul. They basically held hands by the rim. There was no ball involved.
Huh?
So everyone's all high on that because they beat the Heat and they swept the Heat this year. The Heat don't care about the regular season.
No, they never do. Never, ever, ever. Absolutely, they
don't care.
They don't care, and that's what happens when you win championships. They know how to play the regular season. To get to the playoffs, jockey themselves, and then go on that ridiculous hot streak when it matters the most. And for that Nets, for the Heat, that's what they do the best. And you know that the Knicks fans fell in the same trap last year, and that's exactly how it goes for him with that situation. So, with that being said, it's really, really difficult to think what would. You can't get excited. You gotta be even flow, and especially with the Nets' track record. In recent years, they blew a series last year against the Bulls. So a lot of it's gonna really come down to Jason Kidd being able to manage his bench well against the scrappy Bulls, who are a very, very scrappy and talented team, and that's without their star player with Derrick Rose. I know he hasn't really played in the last 2 years, but he still deep down is their best player in the league. Best player for them, and arguably could be top 10, top 5 player if healthy in the whole entire NBA. So it's really going to be interesting to see if the Nets can keep this hot streak that they've kept this whole second half and see where they can take it. And it's amazing to see a bunch of teams that don't normally make the playoffs in the playoffs this year, like the Wizards and the Bobcats. It's really congratulations to them for finally making it. They might not make noise this year, but for certainly, they're definitely going to be talk of the town for them in those towns. So congratulations to those teams right there. It's really who's going to want the 8th seed, either the Knicks or the Atlanta Hawks. So whoever wants to lose to the Heat in the first round, congratulations for not getting a lottery pick.
And the other team's going to win one of any games. The Heat are going to sweep them.
Yes, exactly.
That's just my opinion on it, of course. But other than that, congratulations to the teams like the Wizards.
Yeah. It's awesome for them.
Teams that weren't supposed to be there, who are there.
Exactly. And
let's see, Charlotte, Washington, Toronto made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you if I told you at the beginning of the season that would happen.
I would have laughed at you. And thinking the Knicks would have not made the playoffs, I would have called you high.
Portland also clinched the playoff spot.
Congrats to them as well.
And Phoenix is close to clinching a playoff spot.
Congrats to them as well. It really goes to show you on how watered down the NBA is becoming. And it is what it is.
And San Antonio is going to be the number 1 seed again.
It's going to be San Antonio or the Thunder versus the Heat because the Pacers have completely self-destruct. They're going to win a couple of rounds to play the Heat. The Heat are going to find a way to pull that one out. So the Heat are going to win the three-peat unless the Spurs have something to say, which they had a shot last year. But we all know how that ended. So with that being said, enjoy the remaining of the NBA season. After we come back, we're going to have Dan from Hockey Buzz talk about the Islanders' 2013-2014 season recap.
Yes.
And preview a little bit of the NHL playoffs that's coming up next week. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to the SNDP podcast show on the Schmuck Sports Network, episode 68. Once again, that was Division 1.1 with submission. Now, Dan and I would like to welcome back. We had him on earlier in the hockey season from hockeybuzz.com. Dan, what's up, Dan?
What's up, Dan? Boy.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me back on. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Things have changed since the last time we talked.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. We were a lot more positive the last time we talked. Take us back on what's your take on the second half of the Islanders season, and more importantly, what do you feel is the biggest need in the off season?
Well, I think what we saw this year was a lack of organizational depth. Obviously, you can only overcome so many injuries, but before the injuries started to mount, the season was already headed downhill fast. But I think the biggest problem is the management that put the team together over the offseason. There were glaring needs and weaknesses on this team that were not addressed, and I think they kind of took a chance to get through this season, seeing big picture. Obviously, this year's UFA class, while thin, is better than last year. I mean, obviously, with the likes when David Clarkson and Nathan Horton are your best signings over last season, obviously it's a thin crop, and this year is better. However, the names that were brought in, Pierre-Marc Bouchard, Regan, were failures. The defense was not addressed at all. The loss of Mark Streit was not compensated for. And like I said, once the injuries started to pile up, you had a bunch of kids that were in a position that couldn't handle the new roles, and you just basically they ran themselves into the ground. You can only overcome so many injuries, but even before then, the ship was already starting to sink, and it was more than just a few holes to plug. So this offseason, if Garth Snow is still the general manager, he has to be aggressive. He has to be one of the big winners at the draft, and he has to be one of the big winners the first day of free agency.
Well, I thought that the straight replacing him was there. The problem was that Lubo, the guy who was supposed to fill that role, missed 46 games early in the season.
Correct.
That was just my opinion on it.
No, I agree. But the problem is after that there was no one else that could really pick up that spot. I mean, Andrew McDonald was in over his head. Could not handle that role. He was okay at times, but I mean there was no shot from the point, so no one respected that. But I think, like I said, I think there was no once Wisnowski went down with an injury, there was nothing to replace him with. Matt Donovan was not ready to be that guy. And we can also argue that he might not be being developed properly at the NHL level as well. So that's also something we can get into as well. So moving on, this is going to be a huge off season for the Islanders.
I agree 100% with that. We actually just started our own blog site. Don't forget to check it out, SNDSportsblog.com. I've actually already started on my defensive offseason preview article for it. And in my opinion is we do have a depth of defense. I mean, it was 2 years ago where we took 7 defensemen in the draft. ended up with 8 defensemen that weekend. And we saw Scott Mayfield for the first time this week in the NHL, and I actually saw him a couple weeks ago in Bridgeport. And I'm actually excited to see what he has coming into camp next year.
And with you watching, following Bridgeport so much, what do you think will have him be able to play with the big club next year if he does well in the training camp next year? What do you think about Mayfield?
Well, obviously, with the amount of injuries that the Islanders suffered, all those players were taken from Bridgeport, and currently you have only 3 players in Bridgeport with pro contracts, which is unheard of. It's basically an ECHL team. Now, with that being said, 2 players that have absolutely stood out down there and have played outstanding are Scotty Mayfield and Andrzej Padan, 2 guys that you really hope can make that jump to the next level. I would not be surprised if one of those 2 players seriously push for a roster spot next year and or make the team even ahead of Griffin Reinhart, which I know might sound shocking, but we cannot assume that, as good as Reinhart is, I think he's really going to push for a spot. I think he was very close to being in this lineup this year. We can't assume that he can just step in and be fine. So I think one of the spots next year will go to the likes of a Reinhart or a Mayfield. Eventually, I think Padan needs a little bit more time. He lost most of the season to an injury, but in only 25 games, he has 10 points and 5 goals. He's been very impressive, and he's also been a beast in his own end. So he's definitely someone to look at as well. So I think one spot is going to go to one of the kids, but they have to bring in an NHL defenseman, someone serviceable, someone who can just log minute and just provide some stability back there. They think they're going to start 2 kids back there next year and compete for a playoff spot. They're not.
You mentioned Griffin Reinhart. Do you think they're going to pull one of the moves like they've done with guys in the past and basically put, like, for example, Strome, and put him directly into Bridgeport? Like, let him survive camp till the end and then put him in Bridgeport?
You got to see what kind of camp he has, obviously. If he was to go down to Bridgeport and play 20 to 25 games, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. It also means that some of the kids down there, like a Mayfield or a Padan, might be a little bit more pro-ready, and that's actually a good sign. I think if Reinhart goes down to Bridgeport and plays 25, maybe even half the season down there, I think that shows that they've addressed some of their depth issues, and that's not a bad thing.
Okay, another glaring issue. That the Islanders have is goaltending.
They have a goaltender. I was not aware of this.
Yeah, I know.
Since when?
Since never.
And to think, I thought that was the one bright side.
Yeah. Since you have seen both Poulin and Nielsen sharing a good amount of time in Bridgeport / being the backup / when Nabby's hurt, who do you think will have the upper hand next season? Either one would be able to make the team next year or come back?
I don't think you can expect that to happen. I don't think you want that to happen. I don't think Poulin will be with this organization next year. That's just my feeling. I think it's just the writing's on the wall there since going back down. I know they're basically an ECHL team, but he has not been good. The problem with Kevin Poulin, and I said this for years, I like Kevin Poulin. I think he's a great guy. But he's the same goalie he was 3-4 years ago, even before the knee injury. He was the same goalie. If you have a really good defense in front of him, I think he could be maybe an NHL backup to a very good AHL player. When he had a decent defense in front of him, he excelled. But the same problems are there: over-aggressive in the net, and flopping around at times, a weak glove hand, inability to catch the puck, always losing his stick. I think coming from juniors, it just never got any better. There was just at some point he just kind of plateaued. So I really don't think we can consider him long term with the team. Anders Nilsson has talent. He obviously has a lot to work on, but he's not ready. And the fact that he's playing right now just shows that there's no depth in the organization. In 2.5 seasons, he's only made 46 starts in the AHL. That's not even half of a year. That's a little more than half a year. He needs to play in Bridgeport next year, play 60 to 65 games, and just be left alone. Even if they sign another backup goalie that they can put down in the AHL, I'm just off the top of my head, someone like a Zakov, or actually he's a backup goalie now, but someone who has experience in the minors that they can call up if there's an injury, something, and just leave Nielsen alone and work with him the entire season and just let him play and let him start. and revisit him in a year. I think he has talent, but he needs direction, and he needs to be coached correctly, and he needs to play a lot. He's missed a lot of time, missed almost all of last year with the illness, had some issues the year before. And like I said, over 2.5 years, only 46 starts, you can't expect that he's going to be NHL ready. At the NHL level, they have to bring in a starting goalie. They have to be aggressive, and I know they're going to have limited funds like they always do, but 80 to 90% of those limited funds need to go to a starting goalie. They have to get someone in here, and I'll be honest with you, I'm willing to give almost anyone a chance. If it looks like they can stop the puck, I'm willing to give them a look. Backup, I wouldn't be against Nabokov being the backup goalie next season, playing 20 to maybe 28 games. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Obviously, if they wanted to bring in a backup goalie as well, or maybe two guys who haven't been proven starters but have been good backups, to bring both of them in and compete for the starting role, I wouldn't be against that as well, but they have to address this situation because a good goalie would make up for a young defense.
Well, one guy I, of course, look at, of course, being an Islander fan who wants them to actually spend money, is Halak. Because if you remember Halak's best years, the reason why he got his contract in St. Louis was that playoff run in Montreal that he had.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think Montreal made the mistake of keeping Price and letting Halak go.
I think Carey Price is a really good goalie. I think they had two good goalies, and they moved one of them. I wouldn't, if I'm Montreal, I wouldn't second guess that. But I do like Halak. For some reason, I'm getting the impression that he might stay in D.C., but for someone who's been traded as much, I don't think loyalty is not really an issue there. You might be able to buy him. He certainly would be an upgrade. I definitely would not have an issue if he was a goalie. If he stays in Washington, then he might be able to make a phone call about Braden Holtby. We've seen Braden Holtby play very well. We've seen him play very good in the playoffs. He's definitely someone I would be interested in as well. James Reimer, also someone in a bad situation who I think has talent. And I think you could get Holtby or Reimer and not have to trade your first-round pick to get him.
What about a guy like Hiller?
The Ducks people keep saying, well, the Ducks have so many good young goalies. They have Gibson, they have Anderson, back and forth. They're going to go young. They're going to let Hiller's going to test the market. If you're the Ducks and you can win the Cup this year and you can win the Cup next year and you can probably win the Cup the year after that, why would you want to roll the dice and take those chances? I think they'll aggressively try to re-sign Hiller. Now it's obviously up to him if he wants to test the market or not. If he does hit the market, he needs to be priority number one.
That's all fine and dandy, but we all know the Islanders are bargain basement shoppers, unfortunately. When do you think the Islanders, is it until they get a new ownership, or is it when they move to Brooklyn? Because I remember
could be either.
It could be either as well. But I could see them taking an approach like the Brooklyn Nets did. They were pretty much never getting the high price free agent. Then the minute they moved to Brooklyn, they went crazy. And it's really interesting to see which approach the Islanders are doing, because they're still in that quote unquote rebuilding stage, probably year 20 of the rebuilding stage, but nevertheless a rebuilding stage. Do you think the Islanders are going to try to get new blood, try to get those key players to make a playoff run anytime soon, or is it one of those you got to remain patient and just stick it out, because it's really one of those things that you're tired of seeing the Islanders only being able to pick up guys who are like grade C or D level players and you're not going to get much out of it. What do you think this offseason is going to bring? Pretty much the same as it's been.
They have $14 million. They have $14 million that they have to spend. That's the difference in other sports. They have to get to the base of the salary cap. So it's going to be between $13 and $14 million they have to spend. After they re-sign their RAs, they're probably going to be looking at about somewhere between $7 to $10 million that they're going to have to, they're absolutely going to have to spend. So let's just say they only sign two free agents. They sign a solid, dependable defenseman for maybe around $3 million, and then they're going to have somewhere between $4 and $7 million to address the goaltending. And so while I don't expect miracles with them opening their pocket and dropping millions upon millions upon millions, the money they have to spend can be allocated to spend $6 to $7 million on a goalie, which should get you someone who's very good.
All right. Well, all right.
But as for Wong, spending more than that, if he's the owner, there is nothing right now that leads me to believe if he's the owner that they're going to go nuts and start spending left and right.
Correct.
Now, when they get to Brooklyn, that's a different story. And if the team is sold over the off season, then that's completely a different story too. Because if a new owner gets in there, obviously they'll clean house would most likely, and they'll want to make a name for themselves, and then you could see a big summer of spending.
It basically came to proof now that he's looking to sell that he only bought this team for the land. Is it safe to say that?
I wouldn't stop you from saying that. I mean, obviously we don't know. It's conjecture, but at this point it seems that's a valid statement you can make.
Okay, so now that
or he's been so jaded about what's gone on in Nassau County for 10 years that he's tired of losing money and he just wants to get out. I think that's also a reasonable statement as well.
I think it's more column B than column A, if anything, because he finally was getting the Islanders up and coming, and then they just crapped the bed again when they first came.
You look at it was a long time ago, but they spent a lot of money on Yashin and Pekka when they thought that they wanted to make a splash and get back to being relevant, almost over 10 years ago. So I just don't know. It's hard. That's a very hard question to answer. I think it's a combination of many things. I think you're also at a point where I think he just wants out, and if the deal's there, I think he'll take it.
I agree with you 100% with that. And also didn't help with Sanjay back in the day, him getting in trouble with fraud. That definitely didn't help Charles Wong's situation with that as well, but that's beside the point. All right, playoffs are around the corner, a week away. What are you excited? What are you most excited for coming up next week? I know the matchups are not set in stone, but which teams that have made it and clinched so far? What team are you excited to see more on a daily basis coming up for the next couple of weeks? Who are you rooting for the next couple of weeks?
Well, I only root for one team.
Well, okay, but
the Hartford Whalers don't play anymore, Dan.
They wear blue and orange, and it's not the Oilers. But with that being said, I think there are some teams that you can definitely get behind and are pretty easy to root for. I think the Western Conference playoffs are going to be insane, regardless of what the matchups are. They're just going to be absolutely crazy and insane, and a must-watch every night. I like watching Columbus play. They work their tails off. They're not the most talented team in the world. They're well coached. They're well run. It's like they're almost like the exact opposite of us. But they're definitely fun to watch. I enjoy watching them play. I think Columbus is an underrated sports town. I think they have a pretty good home ice atmosphere there. So they're a good watch. I enjoy watching St. Louis play. I think an interesting storyline will be Ryan Miller in the playoffs. And could this be the year that St. Louis gets to the finals? So I definitely think they're going to be someone to watch. And in the East, you have to watch Tampa. Of all they've gone through this year, Cooper has done a fantastic job with that team. And if you told me that St. Louis was going to request a trade and Stamkos would miss most of the season and they really wouldn't miss that much of a beat, I would have thought you're crazy. So I really think they're going to be fun to watch. And as I think of Cooper, he was an AHL coach, extremely successful there with Norfolk before coming over. A lot of times I hear, about the Islanders' next coach, if they're going to make a change, you got to get a name, you got to get a big name, you don't. You have to get the right guy. And that right guy might have never, coached in the NHL before. I mean, Claude Julien at one point was a rookie coach. Bruce Boudreau at one time was a rookie coach. And Cooper proved he could coach in the AHL, and he's a good fit there. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a massive, huge name. It just has to be the right guy, and they have to find that person if they decide to make a change. So I definitely think that the teams that I'm going to be looking forward to watching are Tampa, Columbus, and St. Louis. But like I said, some of the games out west with San Jose and LA and Anaheim and then Chicago are just going to be crazy.
I do agree with the St. Louis thing, 100%. My biggest question, though, from St. Louis, of course, is how does Ryan Miller play in the playoffs?
Right.
Because to me, I think that's their biggest question. But of course, the team,
that's not my biggest question with them. My biggest question with them is can they score enough?
Yeah, but if Ryan Miller plays like the Ryan Miller we know, they won't have to score enough.
But it might be a game where there's times they're not juggernauts offensively, and there might be a game where they have to score 3 or 4 goals. And can they do that? Is my question.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. And also now that the Hawks are going to get healthy for the playoffs, is of course, well, they're the Hawks.
You can't pencil them out until they're absolutely eliminated. They definitely have as good of a shot as anyone is repeating. So.
And they're a team that can go down 0-3, and you still have to worry about them.
Of course, yeah. You can't really pencil them off until the handshakes are going out and they've been eliminated. They're just too deep. They're too well coached. They have great defense. Their goaltending's good enough. Crawford, is a little streaky, but when he's good, he's very good. So they're definitely one of the favorites going back into the playoffs. Despite their injuries, they get their guys back. I think they'll be okay.
I'm actually excited to see the Kings play as well.
Not just the Kings, but the Ducks.
The Ducks are a fun team to watch. They have some guys in that team that are definitely not choir boys. And you watch this team play. They definitely play with some sandpaper and some grit, but they also have finesse and can score goals and a good blue line, a good young blue line. So they're definitely going to be a fun team to watch. And like the San Jose Kings matchup it's just going to be insane. It's going to be amazing hockey. I watched them play last week, and it already felt like a playoff preview, and that's going to be great.
Yeah, there was it the Kings and the Sharks that played on NBC last week?
Yep.
That they showed? Yeah, that was a great game. I was watching it. Hard-hitting, playoff atmosphere there. And, of course, once again, the Sharks make the playoffs, and the question is, how far can they go?
I actually think they can win the Stanley Cup this year. I really do, and I have not felt that in a long time. They did a great job of rebuilding on the fly, so to speak, where, Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau could not get that team over the hump when they were the main guys. But somewhere along the line, they became complementary pieces, and are very good complementary pieces. So now the question is, can the likes of Logan Couture, Joe Pavelski, and Brett Burns, carry a team that now, Marleau and Thornton are more in a supporting role, and you put those guys in a supporting role. Not many teams have the luxury of doing that. But they got younger and they got faster and quicker on the fly. It's just a matter of can Niemi make enough saves. He's not had the greatest season in the world, despite his numbers are good. He's gotten a little leaky at times, so he's someone to watch. But the Sharks, this could be their year. They were always like, the show me state. The Capitals and the Sharks, I'll see it when I believe it, but this could be the year it happens.
Okay, that's pretty bold, but hopefully that can happen.
To be fair, though, to the West, Colorado's a team I want to watch play in the playoffs because they're young and exciting.
Yeah, they don't know any better too. They're so young that they might just not know any better. They're not supposed to win a series.
They're like what the Islanders were last year.
Yeah, except with a really good goaltender and a better system.
Yeah, I was
about
to say that, but
and a better coach, a nicer arena, and
okay, we get it.
And a sold out building. Other than that, though, they're exactly the same.
All right, this year it's a brand new playoff format and everything like that. I was talking about it with Steve earlier while we were prepping for tonight's show. I have to be honest, I'm not a big fan of the 2 and 3 teams playing within the division for the first round of the playoffs. I originally thought that you play the other second place team in the other division. I just think it's a little too early for those rivalry matchups for the first round of the playoffs. Granted, don't get me wrong, it's going to be awesome if the Rangers play the Flyers in the first round. And like we mentioned, was it the Sharks and the Kings before? Okay, it was with that. Those should be like a little bit later in the playoffs. But granted, you're gonna enjoy it regardless. But I'm not really a big fan of playing within the division for the first round of the playoffs. What's your take on this year's changing of the playoff format?
Well, since you two are a little bit younger than me, you probably don't remember that's
not
the
by
way
much. Not by much.
But that's the way it was. And one of the reasons why these teams hate each other so much is because they played each other so much and they played such meaningful games. I think back to when I was like the Sabres and the Bruins, like how much hatred there was between them because it seemed they always played each other in the playoffs, or the Rangers and the Flyers, or the Islanders and the Rangers, or the Penguins and the Flyers. They were always playing each other in the playoffs. I think it's great, personally. Now, you get a better division. One division's better than the other, and you have two teams playing each other, and you're going to lose one of those teams, but it kind of makes it harder to win the Cup almost now, and I can't get enough of it. So you get your first-round matchup, King Shark, sign me up. I'm going to watch every night. Where if the first-round matchup, is Kings Predators, I might not watch every night. I'll check in, obviously, but it's not going to be must-see TV. So I think some of these matchups are just creating games that you're just going to have to watch. I understand why you're concerned, but I just am really, really excited about this.
No, absolutely, fair enough. I guess more mine. I've probably been watching hockey when I'm like 27. So probably I'm going to be 27 in July, maybe 16 years roughly. So I've always seen it that one way. So maybe I'm just being stubborn about it. I'm sure the minute game one, when I'm watching the Flyers Rangers series,
you'll read all about it. Right?
Yeah, I'll, exactly. It's probably one of those things for me. But since I'm so used to seeing the 1 through 8 kind of thing, you're probably right. And the way you put it is definitely a little bit more opening up my eyes towards it as well.
Well, in a sense, you still have the 1-8 matchup, and you still have the 2-7 matchup.
Of course, but
it's just the 4-5 and 3-6 now are much better matchups than you might not see.
Yeah, it's pretty much the meat. So you're getting the more meat in the sandwich opposed to not the meat,
Right, yeah, exactly. You're not getting a bunch of lettuce; you're getting a lot of steak.
Exactly, and you're going to go to a nice Italian deli opposed to Subway.
Right.
So, all right, I could see that. Other than the Blue Jackets on the Eastern Conference, who are you excited to follow? I know the Bruins have been red hot. They're most likely going to win they're going to be the number 1 seed for the Eastern Conference. We know it's going to be interesting to see with the Penguins, as we know. The Canadians are going to the Canadians. Pretty much the Eastern Conference is going to be up for grabs, but there's a lot of storylines and teams that are really interesting to see who they're going to make a nice Stanley Cup run. Who else are you excited to see in the Eastern Conference other than the Blue Jackets that you mentioned before?
The Bruins just look like a team on a mission right now. They look focused. They kind of fix some of their issues in the fly. Obviously, they got to be healthy and whatnot. I mean, somehow Drew McGinley found the fountain of youth. Their goaltending is outstanding. Roska's having a career year. Their team defense and their system is just perfect. They're a team that's built for the playoffs. But now that it seemed this year that's trickled over into the regular season, and they're getting more scoring than they have in the past. Krejci is having a fantastic year. We all know about Bergeron, but they're big, they're bad, they're mean, and like I said, they're a team that is just built to succeed at this time of the year. So obviously they're going to be the favorites in the East. But with that being said, you can't count out the Penguins. They have they're a team that's not exactly built for the postseason, but they have enough talent to actually make a run. And you have to look at their record. And if Crosby's on the ice, they're going to have a chance to win every game. They're not someone I would pick to come out of the conference, but I'm certainly not going to write them off or discount them because there's just too much talent on that team. Montreal is an interesting case. I think Price could get hot. He's had a very good year, fantastic Olympics, and they definitely have a home ice advantage. That place is special. Montreal is just a special place when it comes to playoff time. So it's always fun to watch them play in the playoffs. So while the East doesn't have the dominant names that the West has, they still have some good storylines, and it's going to be good hockey to watch. Like a Flyers Rangers matchup, who doesn't like that? Even though we're not exactly fans of either team, it's going to be fun watching two teams pummel each other from the opening face-off of Game 1. So, it's going to be interesting to see who comes out of the East, but obviously where the West is wide open, I think you would have to say the clear-cut favorite in the East is Boston, and if they don't make it to at least the conference finals, I would kind of be surprised.
I'm not going to lie, I was thinking the other day that when the new odds come out for the playoffs, for the Stanley Cup, that Boston's a team to put the money on, in my opinion. They're built for the postseason. That's how I see it. They score, they have goaltending, and they have defense, and they're big. They're tough, and they're physical. And that's what you need in the playoffs. Look at Penguins for the past couple of years. They lose to Boston because they can't hit them. The Islanders almost beat Pittsburgh last year because they took their bodies and threw them at the Penguins players.
Yeah, the Penguins. We all know the Penguins do not like to get hit. We know that.
Right.
Not at all.
And that's why the Islanders almost beat them in the playoffs last year. The Islanders figured it out after Game 1. The idea was to hit the Penguins players and go after them.
Well, if only the Islanders could have transferred that to the other 29 teams in the league, maybe we'd be talking about them being in the playoffs. However, we are not.
Or just this season.
Yes, absolutely. But the Bruins are definitely the team to be in the East. I don't want to say they're the clear-cut favorite because there is just so many good teams in the West, and any of those teams that come out West can match up with the Bruins. The Kings match up with the Bruins. The Blackhawks obviously do. The Ducks obviously do. The Sharks. Who knows what the Avalanche are going to bring to the table? So I don't want to say the Bruins are the clear-cut favorite. I would just say they're the clear-cut favorite to come out of the East. And whoever they would play in the West, I would expect an epic Stanley Cup Finals.
And you know what? When I look at the teams that are in the playoffs as of right now and the teams that have the chance of making it, I look at the playoffs as a good, if Chicago gets healthy, as a good possibility that we see a rematch from last year.
It's quite possible. I wouldn't be surprised.
But then there's also the teams like the Ducks that I really like this year, who came out of nowhere, in my opinion. And then
they were there. I think they had some blue line issues that they had to address, and Hiller wasn't exactly healthy the last couple of years. But the forwards were there, obviously, and I think there's a little bit more depth on that team now. They have a little more balanced scoring. It's not as top heavy as it was in the past. So, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that they're back in the playoff mix. I might be a little surprised at how good they are.
Okay, 100% I agree with you on that. I'm excited. Playoff hockey next to football for me is my favorite postseason around. Who do you think's going to win the MVP this year?
Regular season MVP.
Regular season. Yeah.
The way this league goes, I mean, I see Crosby and Ovechkin getting nominated, even though obviously I don't feel Ovechkin should win the MVP. You can make an argument for one of the goalies that have carried their team. You can make an argument for Rosk being considered for MVP with the season he's had, or maybe what would Columbus be without Bobrovsky? I mean, they're better now. They have more scoring. They're better defensively, but boy, that guy stands on his head. And Bergeron, back to Boston for a second. Besides Rosk, Bergeron is someone who does not get enough appreciation. Just the way he plays, the complete player he is, and you have to look at Taves. I honestly don't know who's the MVP of this league right now. There's quite a few guys you could give it to. Knowing the history of the league, I would assume Crosby would get it, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's obviously the most valuable player on the team in the league.
I agree 100%.
He's had a fantastic season. I can't take anything away from him. It's just, I think somehow I always had the argument a couple of years ago when they were all healthy, when you had Datsuk and Zetterberg in Detroit, and you had Malkin and Crosby in Pittsburgh, and I always said to the argument, would you rather have two guys who are going to come both capable of scoring 100 points, are okay in their own end, their plus minus will be around even, maybe +3 or +4, +5, or would you rather have two guys who are going to have about 80 to 85 points, but be +40 each, and play in any situation, kill penalties, do anything you need from the team? I love two-way players. And I think now the way this game has become, two-way players are the guys who lift the Stanley Cup when it's all said and done, if you look at the teams that have won the last couple of years. So I know we have the Selke Trophy, but I don't think guys like Bergeron get enough credit, or Jonathan Toews, or even guys like Andrei Kopitar or Joe Pavelski. You could make a strong argument that Joe Pavelski has, it's had one of the finest seasons in the league. So those guys probably won't win it, but they're definitely someone who should be in the conversation.
I'm with you 100% on that one.
HockeyBuzz.com. New article came out today. Battle level high.
Yep, HockeyBuzz.com. Come on over, check it out. Got a new article up right now. I usually try and write like every other day. You can also follow me on Twitter at DanDanNoodles78.
He's a great follow on Twitter.
He's a great guy to hang out with. I hung out with him last night at the Island game for a little bit. After the game, we're meeting some of the
Yeah, it was a
players.
good time. Unfortunately, the result wasn't there, but I had fun last night.
Until next year, though.
Yeah, well, maybe we do something for the draft too, because
Yep.
it's the off season. Unfortunately, the off season is probably more important than training camp right now. This has to be a winning off season for the Islanders to right the ship. I don't think it's as bad as people think it is. I mean, it's certainly not good, but I think if the team is aggressive and makes the right moves, I don't want to say they'll be a playoff team next year, but they'll be in the discussion, and I think that would be a big jump.
Okay.
Like you said, Dan Doodles
78.
HockeyBuzz.com. Don't forget, there's no party like an Islanders draft party.
That's right, because that's all we have.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, welcome back to SND Podcast. You just listened to, once again, Submission by Division 1.1. Thanks again to Dan from Hockey Buzz for coming on and talking to us about the Islander recap and everything that is wrong with the New York Islanders. And hopefully they get that fixed for the next season and helping us preview the best we can with the playoff matchups for the playoffs that start next week. Before we end the show tonight, Steve, we didn't get to talk about baseball much before. Within it's pretty much the start of the second week of the season. What is your take so far with the Mets and Yankees? They've both been blah so far. A lot of yay moments and a lot of ooh, okay. That might hurt them at the end of the year if this continues to be a trend for them.
I honestly don't know what to say about either. The Yankees I haven't really been watching, so I can't really speak for them. Other than all I saw was Tanaka, whatever his name is, gave up a home run on his first batter and then had like 8 innings of 2-run baseball. So basically there was no point in anybody saying anything.
Yeah, Nova's been playing, and right now the Yankees starting pitching has been blah at the moment, but it's early in the season. They could easily turn that around since we've seen it in the past. So the Yankees are that. The bats that they've got in the offseason, they're slowly coming around. Beltran at the moment on Wednesday night's game is 3 for 3 with his first home run, and that was a Yankee Stadium bomb for a lefty. So that's coming. McCann's is coming around. Unfortunately, Teixeira went on the DL last week. Solarte, the biggest Yankee, he earns my favorite Yankee. He earns Yankee of the Week.
Yankee of the Week.
Yankee of the Week. He's been playing great for the Yankees. He was the last player to be picked up on the Yankees this year. He outbeat Engarden Nunez. So congratulations for him stepping it up. And he might earn that third baseman spot. So it's really going to be interesting to see if he can keep that up. I know it's only been a week, but a lot of Yankee fans have been enjoying him this week so far. As for the Mets, they're a roller coaster. They'll look great one night and completely look bad the other night, but that's what happens when you're a 500 team. Who's your Met of the Week?
My Met of the Week? Met of the Week?
Met, yeah.
My Met of the Week? Davis has been hitting.
Yeah, when he has played, he did hit that walk-off grand slam. So
I
have to go on Lagares.
Yeah, but they let Duda start over Ike. That's the thing. Who doesn't hit?
The only 2 hits he's gotten so far this season were the 2 home runs to help them win last Friday. So Mets are getting home runs from their first baseman. Hopefully that stays consistently. So it's really going to be interesting to see. By the way, congratulations to Daniel Murphy on his wife having their first child.
Yes.
We're not Boomer and Carton and Franny. So congratulations to D. Murph on that.
He was allowed to go.
Yeah, good for them. We're a week late with that, but we didn't get to record since then. So congratulations to that. The Mets are going on to the West Coast trip. That's going to be really interesting to see on how the Mets are going to handle themselves, especially against the Angels, who should be able to take care of the Mets any day of the week. The Yankees have a little homestand against the Red Sox. it's really going to be interesting to see that rivalry pick up again, and we're going to see how the Yankees are going to be ready for this this amazing 4-game set against the Red Sox. Granted, it's still early in the season, but they're bragging rights on the line, and they want to take it to the defending world champs. Last year, it was back-and-forth battles. Obviously, the Yankees did not play well against the Red Sox, considering the Red Sox did win the division. So it's really going to be interesting. I'm excited to see that pitching match, that series, as always. You're going to have your 10-hour baseball games, unfortunately, but it's really going to be interesting to see which Yankee team shows up. Maybe they get the bats going, and maybe Ellsbury sticks it to his old team. So it's really going to be interesting from that standpoint. Steve, take it away.
Well, just don't forget, we have some great articles. Vin's been doing the Met articles. Yvonne's been doing some Yankee articles. Joe's working on an article for some baseball stuff. Dan has his Justin Tuck, the SNDPODCAST.com. Don't forget to check it out.
Check it out. Yeah, I'm going to start doing my prep work for the Giants draft. A lot of good tidbits. There's still a lot of room for the Giants to get, and I know we're not going to be getting a DB, so I'm very happy with the Giants' offseason so far. So let's see if the Giants can get a couple more pieces and make that playoff push next year. Maybe contend for another Super Bowl, but we all know that's a long way to go. We are going the Seattle Seahawks formula way of doing things this offseason with the
defensive backs,
with the DBs. So maybe that helps out next season. So that being said, continue to follow us on Twitter, Instagram. You know the rest of that. Continue to go on SNDSportsblog.com. All our writers are working hard. I wanted to mention 2 weeks ago when I was doing my video blog, it's going to be, thanks for being patient with us. We're still growing as a blog and everything like that. So thank you again for checking it out. Once again, thank you for Dan from hockeybuzz.com.
Isles Insight.
Yeah, I didn't get my Facebook status. I didn't even get to mention. Don't forget to say congratulations to Andy and the other boys on doing Islanders Insight. They finally broke away from Fanside, granted a great website. They're doing their own thing, so congratulations on them being an independent blog. So it's the same awesome stuff that you guys saw on Eyes on Isles, but just with a different name. Once again, check out Dump and Chase Podcast, and I can't forget to mention Blue Line Station, especially with the Rangers coming up in the playoffs. You know Danny and the crew is going to have great articles with that as well. So
yes,
here's that and more. Enjoy this weekend, and enjoy your sports this week.
And we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.